So good morning all, and welcome to another one of Health Data Research UK's bi-monthly institutional webinars. So good morning and a warm welcome. So for those of you who are familiar with these webinars, or for those of you who are not familiar with them, these webinars, we hold them for the HDR UK community on the first Tuesday of every other month. So we'll next be online on the 2nd of November. So these webinars are open to the whole HDR UK community, so investigators, researchers, postdoc tech teams, students, fellows, management teams, and also patient and public involvement and engagement members too. So the aims of these webinars are to bring the research community together, because of course we're a virtual institute, we have sites all over the UK, so it's an opportunity for us to come together every couple of months to hear about each other's research. So we normally have a presentation from an HDR UK researcher to share some latest research, discuss a topic of interest by way of a fireside chat, normally with people from an organisation outside of HDR UK, so to bring those outside perspectives in. And then we always close out with a short presentation on latest news and updates from HDR UK Central, so including upcoming events. So this is all to build our One Institute ethos, because of course we are representatives of many institutes, but all under the HDR UK banner. And the idea is that these are interactive, so please don't hold back on using the Q&A facility if you have any questions on any of what you hear today. So my name is Melissa Lewis-Brown, and I'm the Interim Chief Science Strategy Officer at HDR UK, and I'll be hosting today. And actually, I should say that the real Chief Science Strategy Officer, Ros Walker, who I'm covering Ros's maternity cover, she'll actually be back later this month. So you can look forward to working again with Ros when she comes back. So today's lineup, so we are going to kick off with Matt Sides, who is going to tell us about clinical trials in a data-enabled world. So Matt is Professor of Clinical Trials and Methodology at UCL, part of HDR UK London, and also leads the clinical trials theme for the British Heart Foundation Data Science Centre. We will have a fireside chat about the Office for National Statistics new COVID-19 question bank, and that will be with Jessica Atkins and Brian Dissel at the Health Analysis and Pandemic Insights Directorate, the part of the Policy and Engagement Division. And then, as usual, we'll have a roundup from Sindhuja Manohar. Sindhuja is our Public Engagement and Involvement Manager at HDR UK Central, as I say, to kind of give a roundup of latest and upcoming activities from the HDR UK Central team. So, without further ado, I will pass on to Matt Sides to tell us about clinical trials in a data-enabled world. Thank you, Matt.
Good morning, Melissa. Hi, thank you for having me today. As Melissa said, I'm Matt Sides. I'm Professor of Clinical Trials and Methodology at the MRC Clinical Trials Unit, where I co-lead with our Director, Max Palmer, our research into trial conduct methodology. How do we do clinical trials better? But for the last couple of months, I have been seconded for a day a week to be the Associate Director of Data-Enabled Trials at the BHF Data Science Centre as well. And over the next few minutes, I'm going to talk about some of the work we've been doing in both of those areas. The timing of this is slightly unfortunate. I've literally just said goodbye to my younger son as he's headed off to his second year at university, so I'm not really looking or performing at my best this morning.
Oh, Matt, that's so sad.
That's just one of those things, isn't it? So maybe this will be a great distraction for me. So we're going to talk about what are trials or data-enabled trials, particular challenges or trials, challenges that are particular to trials. Then we'll talk about some of this that comes out of recent papers. So for those of you who don't know what clinical trials are, and where have you been if you don't know what clinical trials are after the last year of news, they're the gold standard method for assessing new treatments. They're broadly broken into early phase trials, things that focus on gross safety signals, which are often small or modest in size and often short-term, and then late phase trials focusing on efficacy and balancing with safety. Those are usually randomized, and we randomize because that's a way of making sure we've got balanced groups at the start so we can understand better if the treatment is causing any improvements or any detriments, of course. And it's okay to randomize, because so often new isn't better than what we have already. In fact, if we knew that a new treatment was always going to be better, we wouldn't need to do trials at all. You often take hundreds or thousands even of participants. They're often multi-center. They're, in many instances, international. At least if you want to count, a four-nations approach within the UK, many trials within the UK will be international. And they're usually longer term, taking 3 to 10 years. And some of the things that make trials different to other forms of research are the need to require informed consent up front. And the consent is partly about the risk for not knowing what you're going to be, which of the treatments you're going to be allocated to, and about prospective collection of data. And usually, with any health research, it's sensitive healthcare data. It's often on dedicated forms for collecting data. It's generally going to be sent to a trials unit or maybe a clinical research organisation. And some of that data will be direct from the participant. So what are data-enabled trials? Well, the NIHR, HDR UK and CPRD, Clinical Practice Research Data Link, ran a workshop on data-enabled trials, and they suggested data-enabled trials are ones with efficiencies from embedding all trial aspects in routine data. So that's about the study design, the feasibility assessments, the recruitment, the follow-up, the analyses, and the interpretation. Now, that's suitable for many trials, but I don't think it necessarily works for all trials. But many can embed some of those and get those aspects of routine data to come in. So many trials can certainly be digitally enabled. Healthcare systems data might be able to help clinical trials. There's considerable overlap between the data we need for clinical trials and the data that's already collected in healthcare systems. So appropriate use of that data could help us reduce unnecessary duplication of effort, reduce transcription errors or data entry errors, improve other aspects of quality, particularly completeness of data, and allow trial teams to focus on other aspects of trial data or systems in particular that might need attention and improvement. It should reduce trial costs, which should allow us to do more research within the same funding envelope, and may even reduce the burden on patients. And actually, there's problems in not using this kind of data. For example, you might miss adverse events, a serious adverse event. One type of serious adverse event is somebody getting admitted to a hospital. And actually, if you get admitted to a hospital that's different to the hospital where you're generally being treated, that could be missed. I'm very conscious that my my aunt has just been discharged from hospital. It's the 5th hospital she'd spent time in the last 3 months. And so, there's a case in point. I'm sure at least one of those would have been missed if she was in a clinical trial. So, are trials using electronic health records? Well, in recent years, the answer is probably not very much. Sarah Lenson, as part of an HDR UK funded review, looked at 81 registries that provided data. She approached 81 registries, 22 of which have provided data to 160 trials between 2013 and 2018. And we estimate that works out to be a small proportion of trials. We think it's the equivalent about 3%, certainly less than 5% of UK trials, compared to at least a number of trials running in 2015. Commonly, there was large cardiovascular or cancer trials, and the data were being used in a number of different ways. Using only routinely collected data or supplementing data. They were using it for methodology work or cross-checking. So it's a real mix what these data were being done for. And important for us trialists to recognise that only a very small proportion of data releases are associated with trials, only about 2%. So when we feel that data providers don't understand trials, and sometimes we'll feel that way, it's not surprising. It's only a small part of their business. The BHF Data Science Centre ran a survey just before I joined up to identify challenges that cardiovascular trial teams have been experiencing. They have 56 responses across and only found 35 trials responding that have recently used healthcare data. And the challenges were about ease of access, timeliness of access, and availability of data. There's a short report from that which is online now. And this reflects, I think, anecdotes that we hear out in the world. It is difficult to get the data. Archie McNair was an MD student working at the unit. It was a cancer trial, but we were interested in cardiovascular outcomes because we were looking at hormone therapy for prostate cancer. And he sought data from NCRAS, from NICOR, from NHS Digital for methodology work to look at the consistency across those. And he found terrible problems in trying to get the data. So he's got a really nice, very constructive paper that's recently come out. You can read it in Trials from a couple of months back. And the recommendations were that, think about routine data up front at the start of your trial. It's more difficult partway through. The trial units need infrastructure to deal with that. And applicants need experience in helping to know how to answer questions. So is that still the case, that it's problematic? Well, there is some hope. Andrew Mackay's review, I wasn't involved in this one, but up in Liverpool as part of his PhD thesis, he found that 50% of NIHR protocols funded for clinical trials said they were intending to use electronic health records for access. So that's really quite different between that 3%. Look, the balance is completely the wrong way there, isn't it? It's weighing in favour of those future expectations, isn't it? So it's great, but clearly we need help in trying to get people to do this. And it's a ripe area, I think, because there are plenty of skeptics out there who talk to you can't get the data are out of date, the data are unusable. There are also many true believers. Why are we still doing trial-specific data collection? So, somewhere in between maybe is the truth. And that's why we need guidance, and we really need research methodology. So there's a paper that came out, that workshop I mentioned. A very positive-minded workshop focusing on the art of the possible was a word that was used, showcasing what has been done in the UK and using this as case studies from which we can learn and share. And case studies are really important. Here's some of the trials across a range of areas that were showcased on the day. And really the recommendations that came out, well, we should start to more widely adopt these data-enabled methods. This is going to help us. We get lessons from things working well, but also where they don't work well, we've got the opportunity to learn. We need to build in methodological assessments into each trial protocol where we can. We need early engagement of regulators with regards to how you monitor data and how you verify your data if you're planning on using these data in anything regulatory facing. And similarly, you need patient and public involvement to robustly inform those data-enabled trials early on. We need generally increased interoperability between EHR systems because they don't talk to each other so well at the moment. And a clear map about what's there. I keep hearing rumours people are putting together a map. What's captured? What's the meaning? Where is it used? We need this, and hopefully the QQ2 for HDR UK will do this. We need consistency between core outcome sets, routinely collected data, your common data that people would use, and then what the outcomes are, what people are actually going to use in research. And a wider sharing of code lists to support recruitment identification, but also to support identification where people have had an event, the things we're looking to measure in trials. Then we need case studies, success stories, but also things that haven't been so successful, I think, where we get the lessons to show people this can be done and to help drive change for the future. And this leads to capacity building, capability building, and this is really important. And so I could see this in 5 broad areas. So reliable access is about knowing where the data are, knowing they're available, and being able to access them in a fairly straightforward way. We need to be able to do this across primary and secondary care. We need to do this across all 4 nations and beyond if we're running international trials, of course. So the consent wording is important. How do we inform patients that we're going to be using this data? Is routine data special? Or actually, if the trial team is just taking a copy, generally the trial team at the hospital is taking data out from the notes and sending it to the trials unit. And if what's being held centrally or in a registry is just a copy of what's in the hospital records, then it's not really special at all, is it? It's just a different way of getting to the same information. We also need clear costings up front. This is not clear at the moment. The trial teams generally only have one bite at the cherry to apply for funding, so we need to know data are going to be able to be available, that they can get them, and that they're going to be affordable. The data need to be timely. As a minimum, we need to know when the data were frozen. If they're not up to date, how up to date are they? What's the freeze date of that date? It's better if we've got fairly current data. Ideal would be to get live data, particularly if we want to look at safety information. And safety information according to the regulations, where we have to notify the MHRA within 48 hours if there's a serious adverse event. And then we need to know that the data are suitable for use. Do they perform as we expect? Are they as good as or better than our usual trial-specific data collection? So we can do some of this. We can do these studies within a trial, SWATs they're called. Effectively, they're trials within a trial, but we don't use that acronym. And so, here's a very simple acronym. What's a very simple study in the BOSS trial? This is looking at death. Death should be straightforward. We legally have to record death. So how quickly does the information come through? The blue lines are about deaths through trial-specific records, trial-specific data collection. The green through NHS digital data sources. And each year here is when we got a copy of the data. And you can see generally NHS Digital had more deaths reported each time than the hospitals had told the trial team about. But it's only the darker box each time that agreed. So the trial team from the hospital sometimes got the information through more quickly. So what's the completeness? How do we measure this? Now we need more of these. There's a few in the literature. Saim Ahmed, who's a PhD student working with me, is trying to look for published versions of these. No one of these is going to completely reassure us. It's not going to make those true believers move away if the data aren't good, or it's not going to convince the skeptics. Knit them together into a kind of patchwork blanket of data. We've got ourselves a story, and that's what we need. But his systematic reviews so far is not coming up with a huge number. So we need to encourage trial teams to do this where they've got data from two sources. And if you look at the SWAR repository in Belfast, you can see his protocol. If you know of people that might be able to do this, then we can do more of this. I'm going to skip over codeless and phenomics because that's being led by other groups, but reliable interpretation is really important. The research community needs to have confidence in the findings. And it's not just that, it's about the MHRA and other regulators outside of the UK as well believing the data where we've used routine data. And not everything has to go to the MHRA, of course. If it's not a drug, it doesn't have to, but if NICE get involved or other funding bodies, they also need to be reassured. We need quality publications, and of course what we're doing is looking for improved outcomes for patients as quickly as possible and as reliably as possible. Now the MHRA are interested in quality data. So they helped us co-write this data-enabled trials workshop paper where we talked about checking up front about the quality of data, and it came in their consultation document that they opened up last October. We've been talking to them about this, about what's the quality of the data and how do we demonstrate that the data are good enough. Now, as many people work in this area, I put on the logos of some of the people that I'm working with. There's plenty of people that should be on here. Please forgive me for anybody that's missing. Going to mention very briefly the NIHR MRC Trials Methodology Research Partnership, which is co-funded, as I said, by NIHR and MRC. They have 8 working groups, one of which is Health Informatics for Trials. I co-lead this with Amanda Farron. It's really focusing on methodology research. And now I mentioned that I'm doing work with the BHF Data Science Centre. So if you don't know them, it's a group funded by BHF, led by HDR UK. They've got 6 thematic work streams, one of which is data-enabled trials, and then 3 cross-cutting work programs. It's led by Kathy Sudlow. They've got great staff, as I've got to know them so far, and some fantastic people on their oversight board. Not going to spend time dwelling on that right now. The vision is that within 5 years, a data-enabled approach will be the default position for every new cardiovascular trial in the UK. So the aim to get there is to streamline the use of routinely collected healthcare data for planning, for recruitment and for follow-up. Now, the initial work so far, the survey has been completed. That report is on the Data Science Centre website. More case studies. There are good case studies in cardiovascular. I showed you from Sarah Lenson's review that cardiovascular is one of the areas where people have been doing this well. So the case study is going to come out cardiovascular work. We've had 2 graduate interns, including Camilla here on the right-hand side, who were drawing together these narrative case studies. We've got some nice stories there. They've been sent out to the trial teams, or they're going out this week. And they should be on the website in the next few weeks, and then we'll try and build more out from there. And then HDR UK more generally, I should be pulling out further case studies in the coming months, I think, to really try to help us. And then applications and costing, right? So capacity and capability is really important. We need that better determination of costs, so we're trying to work with a cohort of cardiovascular trials and help them with the costs and lobby for that clarity. And then we want to support applicants on how best to do this. There's a million things we could have talked about today, but we had 10 minutes and not an hour, and I've already overrun. So I'm not going to talk about any of these things. The final concept I want to leave you with is about greener clinical trials. I co-authored this paper that came out from Fiona Adshead as a lead author in The Lancet a couple of months ago now. Well worth a read. We need to decarbonise clinical trials as part of, a greener lifestyle generally and a greener world. So how is electronic health records? How would use of electronic health records help us on that? Well, maybe the decreased duplication of effort, decrease is going to help. Maybe changing the way in which we monitor, the way in which we monitor trials is going to be different if we get access to routinely collected data. Maybe it's going to decrease travel. Industry spends a huge amount of train miles, air miles, particularly car miles, sending people to hospital to copy down data that's already been copied. Well, maybe we can stop that if we already know that the data and routine data sets are a good copy, and there must be other ways as well. So this is a really important concept. We need to talk about this more. I'm going to stop there, and thank you very much for listening.
Matt, thank you. That was fantastic. A complex topic articulated very clearly by you. So thanks very much, despite your inner emotional turmoil this morning. So thank you. Slightly breaking my heart. So a few questions have come through on the Q&A and in the chat. So I'll just read a couple of those out for you. So there's a question around patient involvement. So how do we encourage patient involvement in data-enabled trials, and how do we train those patients and public members to be involved?
So I think that's a really good question. There's a number of areas. So generally we're talking about trials here. So trials have done a really good job in the last few years in bringing patient and public partners on board. We've been doing it for the better part of 20 years at the unit in which I work. And they can be involved in helping us, not just determine the question and shape the question so it's relevant to patients, but think about the wording with which we express how the data are going to be collected, why they're being collected to patients, to help us think about that, to think about the way in which the data are going to be used and shaped, and the dissemination of the message back out to people. And we always try and look after the data in an appropriate way, so help put that across. There are some courses on patient and public involvement, particularly in clinical trials. We run such a course. There are opportunities for people to do that. So I think there are existing training opportunities we can build on there, Melissa.
Another question is, at what point in the research planning cycle should one ideally seek routine collected data to enhance a clinical trial? So a question around timing.
I would say as early as possible in the life cycle of the trial. So start as early as you can. Partly that's because if you're going to rely on a lot of routinely collected data, then you've got to know from the outset that the data exist, that the routine data collect what you want, and they're available in the data set. So NHS Digital, I'm going to keep going back to them, not the only player in town, but they're the biggest. So they're onboarding a lot of data sets on a regular basis, but are the ones you need, are the things you need there already. If you wanted patient reported outcomes, you wanted to know how the patient's feeling, then that data isn't in routinely collected data. You've got to go and collect that in a different route at the moment, right? So knowing that suitability. You've also, if you're only collecting for a little bit of data, you're still going to have to pay the access fee and the retention fee, even if you don't get a lot of data out. So you need to know that up front. So you've got to be able to cost for that. We need funders to start asking people if they're going to use routine data and actually costing explicitly for that up front. I'm going to push on the BHF to do that. Melissa, I'm hoping you're going to help me with the other funders in the near future on how to do this as well. And then, applying early is really important. One of the challenges we found is we said, well, we were only looking for data to support long-term follow-up. But the issue with that is, we then say, well, we don't need the data till the end of the trial. But the expectation of the wording that the data providers wanted at that point has changed. So, we've consented people with one form of wording. The wording they want now has changed, it's different. So what are we going to do? We're going to go back and reconsent all the patients? Well, that's really difficult. That feels like duplication of effort, no reason at all. So if you can flag early on and say you're going to use the data and get into the system, even if you don't draw down data, get in as early as possible. So a long way of saying, start early, do it early.
Great advice. And I know that there are people online who are glad that this session is being recorded so they can share it with colleagues who aren't necessarily quite as familiar with large-scale data-enabled clinical trials.
That's really good. I meant to flag up on that, and I'm sorry I didn't say as it went past. So Suzanne Hartley from Leeds with Macy Murray from the MRC CTU, both of whom have been seconded to NHS Digital, ran a really nice seminar for the TMRP last week about their experiences of accessing data and the work from being inside NHS Digital. So that will be online soon, and the lessons there, and that's well worth a watch. So Melissa, perhaps we can help distribute that link in due course.
Absolutely, yeah. Let's signpost to that when we post the recording for this one. That's a great idea. And let's try and squeeze one more question in. Somebody asked, how do you think NHS Digitrial help this journey for England? And how can the UK Health Data Research Alliance help to realise this potential across the whole of the UK?
Yeah, so what NHS Digital Trials has done, I think, is really give NHS Digital an awareness of the importance of clinical trials. It's something that many of us have been lobbying at them for a while, but try and get, the issues to do with data trials are different to other trials. The fact that we have to retain data for 30 years, the fact that we've got to be able to keep that data according to the regulations is really important. That's something that wasn't widely understood. NHS Digital Trials, through pushing for contracts, has made a difference on that. The helping thinking about that identification, the concept of flagging patients is coming through to them. So I think it's drawing together services that existed, but actually giving resources to actually make that happen. So it's sort of transforming the thinking around that, and that's really helpful. The gateway and the alliance, I think there's a really helpful here for potential to be able to say, right, where are the sources of data? How do we know? At the moment, maybe the map that we talked about should be in there. How do we actually get the map? How do we identify what data are available, and are they available in a reasonable timescale into the gateway? We also need to do a much better job of sharing our data onwards after clinical trials. So I think the gateway has the potential to be a recipient, or at least a flag for where trial data are afterwards for secondary reuse projects.
Great, thank you, Matt. So we've run out of time. I think we could go on all afternoon, I think, all morning. But yeah, sorry, we'll have to stop it there. But Matt, thank you very much for your time. That was fantastic. There's a couple of other questions that have come through, so I'm going to pop them into the chat. Maybe if you could answer them in the chat, that would be great.
Of course. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Matt. Take care. Right, so on to our fireside chat. So if Jessica and Bryony could come up onto the stage, as it were. So a really warm welcome to you both. So in today's fireside chat, we're joined by Bryony Dissell and Jessica Atkins from the Office for National Statistics, ONS. So we are going to be having a chat about their new question bank for survey-based COVID-19 research. So a really warm welcome to you both. And so my first question will be to ask you to introduce yourselves and the work that you do. And I think you have a couple of slides to kind of do that before we kick off with some other questions. And we'll take some questions from the floor very shortly. So get your creative juices flowing. So Brian and Jessica, over to you.
Brilliant. So thank you, Melissa, for the introduction. As you've already said, my name is Bryony Dissell, and I will be presenting alongside Jessica Atkins today on the Office for National Statistics recently launched Coronavirus COVID-19 Question Bank. So a quick run through of what the ONS is, as well as why the COVID-19 Question Bank was created. So the Office for National Statistics, or the ONS, is the UK's largest independent producer of official statistics and the recognised National Statistical Institute of the UK. The ONS has played a crucial role during the COVID-19 pandemic, and this role has included providing independent, robust and timely statistics, informing public understanding of the topic of COVID-19, equipping decision makers with the necessary information to respond to the pandemic. And we have also worked collaboratively, both nationally and internationally, to better understand COVID-19. So this leads quite nicely onto why the COVID-19 Question Bank was created. So during the pandemic, the Office for National Statistics had numerous requests from colleagues across government as well as other sectors for support with their COVID-19 questionnaire design. They also had numerous data requests. We felt that we could better support these requests if we had a single directory that housed all questions asked by the ONS relating specifically to COVID-19. With this in mind, we set to work on the COVID-19 question bank, at all times keeping our users' needs at the center of our decision-making.
So what is the Coronavirus Question Bank itself? It is a repository of questions asked by the Office for National Statistics about the COVID-19 pandemic. It is currently an Excel download that you can find alongside the COVID-19 harmonisation guidance on the Government Statistical Services webpage. What surveys are included? As of last week, we now have all of ONS's household and travel surveys in the bank. So we have all the questions asked about the coronavirus pandemic from those surveys in there. We also link to the Business Insights and Conditions survey. They have their own Excel document with their questions that they ask businesses about the impact of the coronavirus pandemic. And we will be looking to hopefully include them in the future as well, so that we have a whole ONS complete question bank. Now, we have two aims of the question bank. The first is to provide a list of questions that can be used to improve harmonisation across surveys. That's not only within the ONS, but across government and other sectors. The second aim is to provide users with an understanding of what data the ONS holds in relation to the COVID-19 pandemic. This then means that people can request publications and also request access to data to do their own analysis. And what are our future plans? We will be updating the bank every month. This will be with new questions added to existing surveys included, as well as including new surveys that have been published as well. This, for example, as last week, we included the new International Arrivals Insight Survey that published their first foundings last week. We'll also be updating each month with adaptations to help with user experience. With that in mind, we are building an interactive tool to allow for easier filtering and search functions. Now, I can give you a bit of demo on this new tool, which will also show you a bit more about the bank. So at the moment it's Excel, but this is our new experimental beta phase interactive question bank. We have over 900 questions, so asking about the impact of the coronavirus pandemic. The first page is the full list of all the questions, so you can scroll right through them. Each question has the response options there, the source of the survey that it comes from, and also a theme is attached to each question. So you can see this is asked on 2 surveys. If you press more, you can see a code then attached to that variable, and also some time points of data collection, where when it was added to a survey and sometimes removed. There's also some notes attached to some of the questions to help with users understanding any data collection needs for each question. You can also, as well as just scrolling down, search for any topic. So you go booster, and you can see that the questions, the 3 questions that we currently ask on our opinions and lifestyle survey about the vaccine booster jab. You can clear filters there. You can also search by source if you're interested in a certain survey, and by theme. As I said, they have a theme attached to each of the questions if you're interested in a certain topic. We have 2 other tabs as well. So about the surveys, where you can find out more about the surveys, and the drop down shows you what the acronyms stand for. We also link to the latest publication for that, and I'll try and click on that as well, so you can find out about the latest publications for each of the surveys. We then have another help one, which and a tab that shows you what the bank is, and also just help using the bank itself. So that is the bank. I will get back to the presentation.
Brilliant. So how can you help us? So because the question bank was recently launched, it would be incredibly helpful if you could please use the bank and also share the bank with your colleagues and connections. We will be sending the lines of communication to take, as well as the link provided in the slide, so that you're easily able to share it with those that you want to. We also ask anyone using the question bank to please send feedback to the following email address. This is because the feedback will shape the question bank and ensure that we are delivering exactly what our users need. A huge thank you to everyone for attending today, and I think we will now have some time for questions on the COVID-19 question bank.
Brilliant, thank you both. Clear overview. So just to check, is this available now? And the interactive tool is available right now? So ready to go. Okay, fantastic.
So the Excel download is available on the GSS, the Government Statistical Service webpage, which has the Excel download, but we're working on the beta phase at the moment, trying to get some feedback on that first, and then we'll be looking to launch it in the near future.
Okay, fantastic. And I guess generally speaking, who is this aimed at? Who do you imagine would make use of this, and why?
So I think that the question bank is aimed at anyone from sort of expert users of official statistics to inquiring citizens, so the general public wanting to know a bit more about what sorts of questions are asked on COVID-19. And we're hoping that the question bank is designed in such a way that any user would be able to interact with it sort of very, very well. Okay,
fantastic. And are there question banks like these in other countries, and are these questions sort of harmonized internationally?
Given that how quickly the surveys were created to understand the impact of the pandemic, we haven't harmonized the questions internationally yet, but this bank is there to help with the future of questions asked about the COVID-19 pandemic, and we're looking to pursue opportunities internationally as well to collaborate.
Great. And it seems like this sort of doubles up as a great mechanism for transparency around the data that ONS holds, in this kind of category, which public and patients can view as well, presumably. So actually, there's a question in the chat around whether patients or public can use it. So are they able to sort of access information through it? And is it in plain English? So
we've tried
non-expert users.
Yeah, so yeah, this is a public website, so anyone can use it. We've been promoting it on Twitter as well, so anyone can access it. In terms of plain English, we have done our best. We are in the field of data collection and surveys, but we have done, as new starters to this area, we've actually reshaped it a bit and used our own knowledge to make sure that it is in plain English for the general public. And we do always try with any publication within the ONS to have it at a reading age that's for the general public. Yeah.
Good, that's great. So yeah, do any public and patients online, if you use it, please do feedback to the team, because I'm sure they'd be grateful for any feedback to improve. So I guess part of the reason for developing the question bank is so that other researchers, the questions can be harmonized, and then other researchers can kind of link with the ONS data. So if there are researchers listening today who wish to link their data sets with ONS data, how should they go about that?
So we have a web page specifically for anyone requesting statistics that explains how to get publications, how to request a publication from a certain team within the ONS, and also shows you how to become an accredited researcher, which means that you will have a level where you can have access to the data and be able to link your own data set through there. So there's a process involved on our website for that.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I think we're going to share a few links of various things, that sort of information sources that have come up as part of this webinar. So perhaps we could include that link as well. Actually, that might be helpful.
Yeah, that's on the. It's also on the on the harmonisation guidance COVID web page as well, where you can find the bank. We link to that there as well.
Perfect. Okay, and I guess another question is, what's the future of this product? Is it something that you think will get bigger and bigger? Will it kind of diversify and maybe move beyond COVID-19 research?
So I think that that's something that we are in discussion about at the moment. As mentioned and as was hopefully quite obvious from the presentation, at the moment it's very specific to COVID-19 given the impact it's had on everyone's lives, but we are looking into the future and the potential possibility of expanding beyond COVID. But at the moment, nothing is set in stone. And given the resource that the question bank requires, we'll have to look into the possibility of that. But it is definitely something that has come to our attention as potentially being very useful.
Great. So it seems like a potentially incredibly useful tool, and that there's a suggestion in the chat that it could be added as a tool on the gateway, on the Health Data Research Innovation Gateway, which can, sort of spread the word about it even further. There's also a question around whether there's been any link up with Wellcome Trust work. I'm not sure if there's something in, there's a link in the chat, but yeah, has there been any link up with Wellcome Trust work?
We haven't yet, no, but that's a really good suggestion. We'll take that away and yeah, go and investigate that. Great.
Well, I'm sure the team at HDR UK will be happy to, help you to add this tool to the gateway if that's of use.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
And so another question is around how you will know when. Obviously, this is a new tool and it's kind of under development. So, what will success look like? In your wildest dreams, if this is a hugely successful tool, which I'm sure it will be, what will that look like, and what will the kind of patient impact of that look like?
We're hoping, so we're looking in terms of, because it's a very new source at the moment. It's we're just launching it and getting the feedback initially at the moment. What we'd love from it is to see that harmonization across the surveys. We'd love to be able to know that this is the source that people are using to request information and publication from the ONS, and also if there are any linkages and data sets to be able to see that impact of the pandemic in the future and how that can influence any policy in the future would be, that would be a great success, I believe.
Brilliant. So in terms of how you'll be evaluating the success of the product, what will be your sort of top couple of things that you'll be looking for?
I think that that's a very good question as well. And as has been mentioned a number of times, it's still a fairly new product. So we're looking to obtain all the feedback that we can. So far that feedback's been very positive, but it's mostly been anecdotal. So kind of specific examples from stakeholders that we've engaged with. We're going to be looking at the question bank downloads. So from the GSS harmonization guidance webpage, that will be a good immediate and sort of initial evaluation of how successful it is, seeing that people are actually accessing it and using it. We also hope to get feedback through the email address that we mentioned in the slides, and again that will be shared with everyone on the call today. We'll also look at sort of user interaction on media platforms. So Jessica mentioned Twitter, that we've been promoting it there. So you can look at interactions that people have with tweets on platforms such as that, so on social media, which will also give us a sense of how exposed people are to the question bank. And if more people are exposed to it, then we hope that that leads or has a positive effect on the number of people that download it, which at the moment is a good form of evaluation for us. But it is still quite new, so we're assessing different methods as well.
Great, fantastic. Okay, so one final question, I think, before we move on to Sindhuja. So there's a question in the Q&A. So many academics and students already use the UK Data Service, which has its own question bank. So would it be a good idea for some link to be inserted to allow UKDS users to navigate to the ONS question bank?
That would be a good one there as well. We'll definitely take that away and look into that as well, and contact UKDSA. Yeah,
that could be helpful signposting. Thank you, Lawrence, for suggesting that. Brian and Jessica, thank you very much. Is there anything you wanted to, anything else you wanted to say? Or I know Brogan's online as well. Or have we covered everything?
Yeah,
I think we've covered everything, but just a huge thank you again to everyone for listening today. And if you have any feedback after using the bank, which we're really hoping that everyone does, it would be really great if that could be sent through to the email address provided.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you very much. And thanks for all that you've done and continue to do, at ONS in the pandemic. We're all incredibly grateful. So thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we'll now move on to Sindhuja for a roundup of latest news and upcoming events from HDR UK Central. Sindhuja, would you like me to share your slides?
Yes, please, Melissa. So hi everyone, thanks so much for having me today. So while Melissa kind of gets my slides up, just wanted to say I will very much be giving you an update on some of the very exciting areas of work. But please do put in any questions in the Q&A function or in the chat, and I will do my best to answer them at the end. Next slide, please, Melissa. So to start off with, I think it's always a good thing to reflect on learnings and achievements. And so if you haven't seen it already, I would definitely recommend having a read through of the latest HDR UK annual review for 2020-21. So this year's annual review focuses on our role in the research response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And I'm sure you'll have seen the wide range of news stories over the last year, which just shows how health data research has provided such huge value in science by uniting and improving and using the data. And it is very much our research community that's enabled this through things like clinical trials, effective treatments, and so much more. So our annual review is very much an opportunity to kind of acknowledge this and celebrate all of the hard work and commitment of the UK health data science community. So please do have a read, and I will make sure to put a link in the chat once I finish talking. Next slide, please, Melissa. So a big area of focus for us has very much been working in partnership with data custodians across the UK to make COVID-19 data sets and data linkages available to researchers. So through the Data and Connectivity National Course Study Programme, we've enabled a range of data sets to be made available for COVID-19 research across a network of trusted research environments. So to outline what this includes, the team have put together an online brochure, which I will just post a link to in the chat. So do have a read when you have some time. And actually the brochure is also quite timely, as we, alongside the Alan Turing Institute, have announced a £2 million funding call for the UK's data science community, to all of you, to use health data research to contribute to the national ongoing COVID-19 response, but also future pandemic preparedness. So funding call applications do need to be submitted by the 1st of October, so do have a look on the website for more information, and that link should provide some more information as well. But, in our previous funding calls around COVID-19, findings have helped improve the evidence base on things like long COVID in schools, as well as a review of the vaccines that are currently in use, looking at things like safety and how well it works in the wider community. These are literally just a couple of examples, so I would definitely encourage everyone who is interested to apply for the funding call, as the research outputs really do make a big difference. And next slide, please, Melissa. Okay, so sticking with the theme of COVID-19, some exciting news to share is that the International COVID-19 Data Alliance and the Grand Challenges Initiative have announced 10 global projects that will aim to accelerate knowledge of COVID-19 through data science. So these projects are being set up to very much address urgent research questions relating to COVID-19 using data science approaches, and we'll be working to have a huge impact on the health of communities across the world. So the 10 selected projects really do address quite a range of COVID-19 research questions, and there you will be looking at areas such as the effectiveness of vaccination programs. They'll be looking at understanding disease transmission, the impact on different patient groups and populations, as well as the impact on health services delivery. And the goal is very much to find new ways to prevent and treat COVID-19 across communities and countries globally that will really transform outcomes. And it's expected that outputs from their research will be available within 12 months. So do watch this space for updates over the coming year. Next slide, please, Melissa. Okay, so moving on slightly, I want to provide a very brief update about our HDR UK quinquennial review, which I know we've spoken about a few times in these bi-monthly webinars now. But for those that don't know, we are now over halfway through our first quinquennium, which is another way of saying our 5-year funding period. And so we are preparing for our quinquennial review. So to help us do this, we've been working with a whole range of people across the HDR UK community. And so far, our core theme leads have brought together communities around each theme to really develop the scientific vision and crystallize the main achievements. So our international advisory board and our public advisory board reviewed them all in great detail and really highlighted the huge range of achievements, but wanted us to be even more ambitious for the next 5 years. So we'll be working with them to really make sure that is a reality. We also held our second Frontiers meeting yesterday and used that as a way to update the HDR UK community on where we are now, as well as providing an overview of the feedback from the different advisory groups. It was also a chance to present the kind of framework for the science and infrastructure themes and look at what we need to do and how we'll kind of work together before the next Frontiers meeting in November, before submitting our final report early next year, which I'm sure will come by before we know it. Next slide, please, Melissa. So there has been a lot going on over the last couple of months since the last bi-monthly webinar, and it's been difficult to summarise it all within 10 minutes, but a couple of additional highlights that I wanted to share with you are up here. So first up is that we're excited to announce we have 2 new board members, and they will be joining the HDR UK board as non-executive directors and trustees. They have such a range of experience and expertise, so it's so great to have them on board. Next up is the DARE UK programme, which I believe we introduced at the last session. So the first phase of the programme will look to determine what the requirements are for UK-wide digital infrastructure that has the confidence and meets the needs of groups like researchers, data controllers and public. And so as part of this, the team will be running a programme of sprint exemplar projects and use this as a way to test early thinking, develop use cases, and explore things like governance and public involvement. So they'll be launching a sprint call on 14th of September, so do sign up if you're interested. We're also continuing to build our virtual learning platform, HDR UK Voice. Sorry, it's not HDR UK Voices, that's what I work on. It's called HDR UK Futures. There are more and more bite-sized videos and content, and it's continuously growing, so do have a look as there's plenty of topics to choose from. And not to forget data access and data use registers. So an exciting development is that our public advisory board provided insights and recommendations on how best to embed public involvement in decisions on data use to the UK Health Data Research Alliance. And the Alliance have provided their support to this kind of direction to work towards improving public involvement and transparency in data access processes. So we'll be running shared learning sessions and more as we kind of take on the recommendations, so we'll keep you updated. And we also just closed our consultation on draft recommendations for data use registers, and we had a huge range of responses. So we'll now be looking to incorporate them as we look to develop a standard for what data use registers do and look like. Next slide, please, Melissa. So on to something that is an extremely important area of work is our Black internship programme. So we very much want to lead by example in the health data science industry. And this internship programme, which was in partnership with the 10,000 Black Interns Initiative and the UK Health Data Research Alliance, recruited 54 interns, which is absolutely amazing. And at our wrap-up event in August, it was very much an opportunity to celebrate everything that the interns have achieved, with many of them being awarded extended internships and career opportunities as well. So do have a look at our website to read some of the blogs and videos that the interns have shared as they talk about their experiences. Next slide, please, Melissa. So it wouldn't be a roundup if I didn't share some important dates with you. So firstly, we've got our next Innovation Gateway drop-in session on Thursday, where we'll be looking at trusted research environments. It's open to everyone who's interested, so please do sign up. I mentioned the Dare UK programme earlier, and they'll be launching a sprint call on the 14th of September, so do join if you're interested. The next week, on the 14th and 15th September, they will also be holding workshops for researchers and technologists as a way to run their listening exercise to understand the needs of these groups and populations. Additionally, the Applied Analytics team will be running a couple of seminars in September and October with a different theme each month. And the Gut Reaction Hub will be holding an event on the 27th September, really as a way to showcase the rich and diverse patient-level data that they hold. Better Care will be holding their quarterly insight sharing day towards the end of October before we get to see each other again at our next HDR UK bi-monthly webinar at the beginning of November, when I'm sure I'll have even more events to share with you. Final slide, please, Melissa. So thank you again for having me today. And although it was brief, I hope it gives you an overview of the latest activities. If you do have any questions, please do email us, and I'm sure someone in the team will be able to help. But for the last couple of minutes, does anyone have any questions?
Sindhuja, thank you. The usual comprehensive roundup of latest and upcoming activities and events. So thanks. I always find that really helpful myself. I'm right in the middle of HDR UK, so it's good to have a reminder of all the exciting things going on. Okay, so I think that's it. I don't think that there are any other, let me just check the Q&A. That's done. Yeah, I don't think there are any other questions from our attendees. So it just remains for me to say thank you very much to Sindhuja, to Jessica, to Bryony, and to Matt for your contributions today. It's been fantastic. And also thank you to those who have sent in questions and suggestions via the Q&A and chat. It's been really helpful to unlock even more, sort of interesting content from our speakers today. So thank you very much. It's great to see you all. We shall share the recording shortly on our bi-monthly webinar webpage, so look out for that in a few days, and also the various links and publications and things that we've discussed today as a bit of a resource. So thank you everyone, and we'll see you in a month's time.